Hi listeners, welcome to my channel. I will today cover the lunations of September, which is the full moon and the new moon, which is happening in mutable signs of Virgo and Pisces. And I will cover their history so you can draw the parallels with your personal situation. I would also cover the activation of the May blood moon lunar eclipse, which happened in Sagittarius, which is also a mutable sign. Both of these would bring some past themes back to light in September in our life, bringing some unexpected global events, few individual choices that mutable lunations bring, and like the leaf changed their color in mutable seasons, we would also change our choices, especially the ones which we made from March to November 2015, as we bring an adventure of our life which started in the past to close, because life is about to begin a new adventure on new terms and beliefs by the end of this year, when we'll have the next set of eclipses. These two also highlight the geopolitical jigsaw we see pan out, which I will speak of for key countries I see influenced, like US, Canada, Russia and Middle East. This background comes when we need to figure out our practical role going forward and our well-being in the light of the world that's changing faster than we had imagined. We in September are reminded to ground ourselves in the current moment, because the past and the future are going to try to steal today away. Thankfully, we have many trines, many positive aspects sprinkled throughout the month to help us through the global changes. Key dates of the month along with these bright and positive dates are highlighted in description, which you can use as a mood calendar for yourself for the month. They would be covered by date in my next reading, where we'll do the rundown of the month. As usual, we do two videos which are overall readings for the month. One, we do the larger themes, and the second one we go by date. You can also receive them in your email, especially if you're on my Substack. You don't need to note down those dates because you'll get them in your mailbox. You can subscribe to my Substack, which is my newsletter, to receive the same for free in your mailbox as well. All reference links are in description. As always, I'm thankful to you for being here with me for another eventful month. My name is Charu. I'm your host on this journey. Let's dig in. Before we dig into what's new with the Virgo season, let's get over what's old, which is the activation of the 26th of May lunar eclipse, which happened at 5° 26 minutes of Sagittarius. And back in May, when we covered that lunar eclipse, I mentioned that the activation of that eclipse will only happen in the early days of September, exactly on 6th of September, which we will experience in the early part of September. As I mentioned in the May eclipse reading, the full extent of what needs to be released, what has ended, completed from our life as a result of that lunar eclipse, will not be visible till this activation, when through fated events of time around 6th of September, it would show us why we had to let go what we had to in May. This was the last lunar eclipse with South Node in Sagittarius, and it is meant to be a great reset of our minds, our ideology, our knowledge, our education, and our belief system, as well as our global connections, the international travel system, and the international belief system, or how we look at religion globally. Whatever we thought was our religion, our guru, our mentor, our past influence, our previous source of expansion, it needs to be released to make space for new knowledge. It is almost like emptying your head out of a certain type of information and thinking, getting it ready for the next adventure, for the next level of growth. This, along with Virgo New Moon, is a mental leap that we are taking in the early part of September, and it might require you to let go something. It motivates us to be more, but due to South Node, it comes with a release and even a loss or a disclosure of sorts, because it was a lunar eclipse. Something might come globally to surface in terms of disclosures. Sometimes to stand for what we believe in, we have to let go what we gained in the past, because if you keep on repeating what we have been doing in the past, we will not get what we need to attain in future. So sometimes we have to take a leap of faith, accepting that we might materially lose in the current moment. South node eclipses, they come with something that we need to do for now, which requires us to do it just purely driven by soul, driven by our calling, driven by doing it without expecting material returns. South node activation come with a cost to gain some spiritual reprieve for something that we truly believe in. You have to see the shadow side of use of that energy, which comes with all dualities, because it's a Sagittarius is a dual sign as well. So mutable signs, they always have a shadow side, although all aspects do, but mutable signs definitely have two sides of the coin. So the duality of this thinking is where people would do things at all cost to anyone or to themselves because of what they truly religiously believe in. And because of that, Sagittarius eclipses normally come with religious or fanatic or extreme events, and unfortunately sometimes of loss. This eclipse happened at the degree of translucidity, where we develop wisdom beyond a tragedy, a wisdom beyond intellect in uncertain times. As I mentioned at that time, intellect is overrated. You have to look at a wisdom which comes beyond the thinking of the mind. So expect at your personal level an enlightenment or an epiphany which comes from something that might have been a loss or something that you had to let go, possibly in May. You could connect this to the past ending, because this very eclipse happened in May of 2002, and the activation of that letting go back then happened in February of 2003. And that was done because for the next level of growth that you need to have, an old mindset or an old conditioning or an old education had to be possibly let go. So if you're old enough, you can look at that period, May 2002 to February of 2003. But most of us may not remember that time. Closer dates to look at could be November of 2011 to April of 2012. Now, this is when an adventure was possibly seeded. Something for expansion possibly happened for you, which was seeded around November of 2011, and an event connected to that happened in April of 2012. That adventure has possibly served its purpose in your life. It has taken you as far as it could. So this is a period of karmic cord cutting from the past, from that past in some way. Some of you have already possibly experienced endings with the May eclipse. In that case, now would just be the last thread, some physical way of moving away from it, and even some amount of spiritual clarity on why we had to let go that adventure of our life. South node activations in some way, they settle a karmic score. So if there was a past baggage or something was overdue to you from the past in Sagittarius part of your chart, it could come up. And I'm going to leave the links in the description for you to look back at the May eclipse so you can see what is the Sagittarius part of your chart that was supposed to be activated. Observe, but not get stuck in the past, because past will come up with the South nodes. They bring past karma to life. We would be slightly in a vulnerable position in the first few days, especially around 2nd of September, because Neptune will be opposing Mars at that time. So we can feel a little bit defeated or deflated. And some of us have already experienced that in the last couple of days, especially around 24th of August when I did the single day reading for you of that aspect. 24th of August is when Mercury met Neptune, and it just makes you feel down or just vulnerable in that time. So don't get stuck in that thinking of the past. Think of release it has given you. Take it as a signal of freedom to move to the next level of growth. This has great global impact, and I think I don't need to tell you, you have seen the typical Sagittarius eclipse activation, and it has stimulative impact on international relationship, religious groups, travel industry, and media. As I mentioned back in May, riots, religious incidents, mass movements, travel or space incident, firearms, explosive, loss of globalization of some form, wildfires, issues with animals linked to that, and heat, war, invasion, mass immigration. These are key themes which at global level get activated when a South Node's Sagittarius eclipse happens. And it doesn't mean all of these will happen, but yes, especially travel, immigration, we got to see some incident around that, and we need to be careful about it. And the religious extremist incident, we already are seeing impact of it as we approach the exact activation date of 6th. This is a very nuanced, not a nuance, but a different way of looking at eclipse activation. I follow this because 𝗙𝗪𝒊𝒃, who's the astrologer I follow, who has taught me what I know. He's not alive anymore, but in the past, that's how people used to look at eclipses. So you may not find this being discussed in other astrology reading, but it's the way I have seen, especially on mundane level, eclipse activations pan out. As I mentioned back in May, this eclipse was an ascendant of United States and Biden. For both of their charts, USA and Biden, Uranus opposes this activation, which brings sudden events, which can result in loss, unfortunately, of one form or another, along with information of the past or past karma or past deeds coming to light. We have already seen the impact of it, but not fully. We do need to be careful in our personal capacity, though these events aren't really in our control. So only thing we can do is be careful when we are in crowded places, or be careful while traveling. But since it's all about collective mind, what we could also do in our individual personal capacity is to develop a positive faith of the positive outcomes that can come from whatever release we had to personally go through. Empty our old mind and be ready and open for a new expansive adventure that life can bring, which is always the ultimate aim of Sagittarius eclipse. And we're going to have a new moon or a new eclipse in Sagittarius towards the end of this year, when what has ended, a new adventure in that part of your life could begin. This process of release would continue till then. It will continue till the new moon phase of Sagittarius eclipse of early December. So make space for that. This influences the mutable signs the most, or if you have planets or points making aspects to around 5 degrees of Sagittarius. I have covered this in much details with specific dates of each of the signs specifically impacted by this when I did the May eclipse reading. I'm going to link that in the description. It's timestamped, so just click on the lunar eclipse and you'll see what it means for you. I had also covered the do's and don'ts for each of the signs for these energies, which can help guide you for the rest of the year till December on what are the general road to success kind of themes to follow while the nodes are finally exiting these two signs, which is Gemini and Sagittarius. Remember, South Node's activations always come up with the past. Catch yourself when you see a situation worse than it is, because it has gone worse before in the past. In the first 6 days, we are in a vulnerable position. Remind yourself to stay in the moment and do whatever helps you to ground yourself. Let's talk about the beautiful 6th of September Virgo New Moon, which is happening with excellent aspects and is very, very beneficial. It's our grounding in this volatility. The new moon in Virgo, which is happening at 14 degrees 38 minutes on 6th of September, is going to bring a new start, where possibly an ending or a completion or a culmination happened back in March of 2015. This was potentially a step in health or work that you took steeped in practicality to bring some sort of material progress in your life, which fruitfully showed up fully in July of 2016. So the full moon last at this degree happened in March of 2015, and then it was activated with a nodal transit in July of 2016. So look back on these specific times. This could have been a completion or even achievement in health, career, or service, which possibly came at cost of doing something more dreamy, spiritual, creative, idealistic. Now that we have a new moon here, It might be time to start something new in place of the practical step you took at that time. 6th September new moon is very favorable for a new way, a nuanced way of progressing forward. So look back to March 2015 and July 2016. How would you like to now move differently this time? This was a new start, which we have discussed and worked on in August. So it's not something totally out of the blue, although there is an element of surprise in it because Uranus is involved in it, but a positive surprise, something suddenly clicking, which you might have been working on in August. And we spoke of it in the 16th of August weekly reading. On 18th of August, we had both Mars and Mercury making a trine to stationary Uranus. So we sort of have possibly discussed it, cut through the noise, cut through the niceties, cut through the global noise and saw things as they are in that moment, and possibly had a discussion on these themes. And it brought to focus our individual choices in work and health in the middle of collective changes. I know life is moving fast, but look back at that time, week of 18th of August, week of 16th of August, and specifically 18th of August, if you chose something or discuss something which will be relevant for you, driven by the collective change, the global change, and now you're deciding where is your position in that. I will leave the link to the weekly reading I did during the week of 16th of August, where I went by sign. I have a 1 minute recap, and you can see on screen by sign what Virgo themes will begin for you with a nuanced way of being. This brings to focus our individual choices in work and health and our way to be useful and of service in our individual capacity in this new world, new existence, versus the collective responsibility themes which have been so all-consuming and would continue to be. We are urged to create focus, bring focus to within us, to our own practical sustenance of life for future, our basic needs and upkeep for future, a practical way of assimilating both the passions we hold as well as the collective change that we do mean to be part of, but in our own way. It's bringing about personal clarity when global affairs they seem to be in array and flux. It's breaking something that looks way too big a change to make into small implementable steps, which we can do in our daily life to bring that big change, that big Herculean change in our life that we so crave. There could be a bit of going back to basics here for success. It's about for a moment to not get overwhelmed by it all and ground ourselves, because every dream, it starts with a small but solid step. So one thing about the future that you feel sure about doing, even though it may not be the ultimate goal, because Virgo new moons are not about fixing things. Things will change. The new start that you initiate right now, it will go through some mutations, it will go through shifts. It's about giving it all to the one thing that you right now feel sure about doing, which is of practical service to the future we are all collectively entering into. And it's our 2 weeks to start exactly that. We have such beautiful aspects forming on this date with 3 trines, making it a great day to set intentions. In fact, one of the aspects, which is Venus trine Jupiter, it's the best aspect of this month, which is forming with this new moon. It will make it a great day to set intentions for future growth, to cleanse ourselves of the past with the release of the lunar eclipse, which is happening with South Node. And it is a time to plan for the future which we desire, which is different, to make a resolve to oneself of excellence in work and service and health, no matter which direction right now you choose, as there could be multiple and there could be mutations in that direction going forward. Considering the trine to Uranus, this can bring latent possibilities to life. It will stir up ambitions in you. It can bring us means to be a bigger influence. It will connect us with unique people and propositions. We could be dealing with people with very unique skills, bringing influences that can bring out a larger caliber in us. Peculiar changes, which are positive, yet unusual opportunities. They are the name of the game. It's time to see something different, something stimulating, possibly steeped in technology, science, astrology, astronomy, ahead of time thinking. That brings something of practical service to the collective. We can expand your life. You can expand your life at that time with some new, unusual encounters, because Venus in Libra is making a trine with Jupiter, as I said, which is one of the best transits of the month, followed by the 20th of September, which is full moon, and the second best aspect is falling on the full moon, which is Mercury trine Jupiter. So you could meet someone around 6th of September who's a positive, expansive influence on you, while socially enjoying or just partying, interacting with people, interacting with friends, and it could very well be a romantic encounter. This can be financially very beneficial. It is a great time for financial investment, especially in arts, creativity, entertainment. Mars Pluto trine, which is also happening on that day, it strengthens your resolve, which might have been weakened by the events of the early part of September and end of August Neptune influences. Our power to manifest our thoughts is very strong with this, so focus on the positive and benefit from your associations. Physical initiation of any new moon should be done 1 or 2 days post the new moon, but set the intentions on 6th what you want to cultivate for the next 6 months. As you can make out, despite the geopolitical picture around it, I love this new moon for individual breakthroughs as well as for medical or service related global breakthroughs for mundane events as well. Just know that doubts always come with Virgo initiations. They help keep Virgo archetype retain its diligence and honesty. So when on 14th of September, right after the new moon, doubts will come, take it into your stride. Be kind to yourself and listen to your own intuition instead of another person, because this is sometimes not a real fear which can come up, and it can come up through another on 14th of September. Appreciate the flexibility and the duality that Virgo brings, which is ability in an argument or a discussion or even in a opposition to see both sides of every situation, the night and the day of every situation. But still, Virgo has the discernment and the earthy dedication to figure out what is correct, what is not, and to stick with the option which in the current moment seems practical, seems your way to serve. Individual ambition is important for collective expansion. It's not selfish in these moments to drown the global noise, even though it looks like for compassion sake we should be. And the 20th of September full moon will demand a lot of compassion from all of us, from people who would be impacted by global events. But individual ambition, which might feel selfish almost in this moment, has a space in it in global expansion. It's not selfish to drown the noise of too much news, what's happening in the world. It may be the only way, in fact, in this month or sometimes overall, to avoid overthinking and bring focus back to your individual contribution, which is our focus, and what we need to do for these 2 weeks with the Virgo new moon. Let's talk about the second lunation of the month, which is the full moon, which is happening on 20th of September at 28 degree 14 minutes of Pisces, which will bring a culmination, a completion and ending at the degree of permanent endings. It would come with disclosures. It's a harvest full moon. It will come with results which would seem fated or karmic or final in some ways. This is the harvest moon, which brings harvest of what we have sown in the past. We saw this degree also activated in March of 2015 through a solar eclipse. So as a solar eclipse happened at that time, this becomes a very critical degree. It is a critical degree because of being the end degree of the last sign of the zodiac as well. This is where possibly something which was started without expectation of returns back in 2015, which came possibly at a personal cost to you. You did something, because you just needed to give it for your soul. It's like something was done selflessly in 2015, especially for the period around May of 2015 to November of 2015. So during the course of these months of 2015, you might have done something for selfless reason, for love, for spirituality, for charity. Something was paid forward in some ways at that time. Or it's possible that for your own practicality, you had to let go something. You had to let go a dream or an ideal for practicalities. We would revisit that now, that ideal, that dream, or that sacrifice which was possibly made. And because it's a full moon, we need to put a release or ending to that karmic cycle. So it might be a time to end or complete that karmic cycle of release, of loss, of giving up things, of doing it without any returns. It is time that you have you'll feel that you have paid your dues in some ways, and we need to move forward. Sometimes we could have started a healing practice, a creative work, a spiritual, soulful practice, a charity, a journey back then in 2015, or at least 6 months back. Now we get the result of that. And as I said, it's a harvest full moon. So you sort of get the returns for what we have been working on, probably selflessly for a while. Open your soul for guidance. This is a degree of divine intelligence. It is a degree which is steeped in creativity. A creativity so different, it's tough for anybody else to understand and assimilate. It's a very unique creativity. It's an epitome of fantasy and whimsy. Creativity attached with Kepler, Jung, Einstein, Newton is attributed to star 𝗟𝗪𝗏, which is conjunct this full moon. And it shows the curse or the gift of genius in some ways. In May 2022, next year, May, we would come back to this degree with Jupiter and Pluto sextile in May at this very degree. It will help make this very creation. It will help us take the completion of the creation that we sort of are working on from 20th of September to 6th of October. It will help us take it to the next level of manifestation. And Jupiter will focus on this degree for its retrograde cycle as well in 2022. So it will go over this very degree in 2022 3 times. So I do think that the events of 20th of September to 6th of October will come back for expansion in some ways in 2022. I do think this is going to bring guidance and creative ideas which will be meaningful for our growth in 2022. I covered a preview of this by Zodiac in your 2022 preview in March. I'll link that below. These are the same themes which Pisces full moon will bring up 20th of September to 6th of October, and they will become the sort of the focus of our Jupiter expansion. With Jupiter in Pisces is at its strength, so it's very helpful for expansion in Pisces. It will become the source of that expansion next year. So it's important to focus on what are you working on completing at this period in time, and what kind of divine guidance you're receiving at this time. This is a journey of soulfulness, giving without return, your place in the universe, your contribution to the collective, which you seeded possibly in March of 2015. With a fated initiation in November of 2015. So look back to that period, because eclipses, they continue their journey through these kind of full moons which happen at the same degrees in future. This would be a next chapter to that. This is a degree of drowning, and it sometimes comes with mortal accidents at a mundane level when they're activated, and a very well publicized and known mortal accident. I have my Mercury at this degree, and I've been there multiple times related to drowning despite being a decent swimmer. Normally, I would recommend to be closer to water in the full moon, but for this one, I wouldn't, because it's a degree of extreme, especially natural water bodies. They will be very agitated during this time. Drowning and sometimes, unfortunately, suicidal tendencies and murder, they are seen at this degree, because it takes a person to mental drowning, psychological extremes. We would need to manage our emotions, though I have to say that a mind in Mercury, which is in balance Libra, and a Mercury in Libra would be making a trine to Jupiter on that day, a mind would be in a much more balanced space. It will be in a much more intellectually stimulated position. In fact, it could be a very good position to write down the downloads you're getting, or write down something creatively ahead of time that you sort of want to create. But if you feel emotionally drowned, which we could at this degree, talking to someone, a partner, a friend, it can bring great benefit emotionally and commercially, because they can give a very different perspective of the situation versus what you are seeing. You could see possibilities if you write or speak or expresses, which you didn't see before, because the boundaries between the worlds will be very low at this degree, and some can be very lucrative, considering Mercury is trying to the ruler of this full moon, which is Jupiter. Mind is a tricky thing. I've found with this degree for myself that the flooding of the mind can be done in both directions, right? I have realized in Pisces lunations, and with this degree, you can consider its duality, and you can flood your mind with the positive power of thinking or the negative. So positive thinking at this time, I know it's a cliche, but it's a cliche which works. It can broaden our understanding of what difference we can make in the field to the collective, in the field of benevolence, in the field of media, in the field of camera, creativity, spirituality, charity, service, healing, and for the collective, if we let our imagination and fantasy and downloads known to people. I can tell you one thing: if you feel lost, this is possibly one of the best transits to ask for divine guidance. On mundane or global events, this can come with some accidents, some dramatic revelations as well. Bob Woodward had his Mercury here, and he broke the Watergate scandal, bringing down Nixon. So this full moon can come with accidents, storms, plane accidents. Flooding, as I said, is very common during this time. Natural water bodies would be very extremely agitated. Make conscious effort, if medically possible, to not expose yourself to chemicals. Be careful in terms of slipping, because if it's raining, etc., our foot is Pisces rules our foot, and it's a very sensitive organ at this degree during this time. Immune system in general this month will be very stimulated, because we have two Neptune oppositions in September, 2nd of September and 16th of September. So strengthen yourself for this full moon proactively by guarding and enhancing your immune system. Boundaries are lower. If you feel weak, just sleep. It's a short transit. This is not medical advice. This is how I see astrologically. In global events, this would bring up need for healing, hospitals, spirituality, service, selfless service, need for compassion globally would come to focus. The poor, unemployed, the refugees, the epidemic, it will come into focus. On commercial level, shipping industry, oil industry will come into focus, and of course water bodies, oceans, seas will come into focus. In very rare cases, certain oil companies, they do experience oil spills during this time. Mercury would be walking back the degrees, which it is walking since 6th of September, because we are about to experience the last Mercury retrograde of the year. I don't know whether to celebrate or not, but it's the last Mercury retrograde of the year, 27th of September to 18th of October. So know that things that we are discussing, agreeing, especially diplomatic relationships, discussions on agreements, discussions on partnerships, because the retrograde is in Libra, the sign of relationships, you will find yourself that going back and forth after 27th of September. So after 6th of September, there are things that are being discussed related to connections, relationships, some sort of contractual binding to someone. You will find that we would need more clarity. The lack of clarity on things is because there's so much yet to be seen and understood, which will come up post this full moon, especially in global events as well as in relationships for yourself. Let's go to global events and go country by country very quickly. Paris Climate Accord was signed in November under the activation of Pisces solar eclipse back in 2015. So we will see it show up during this time again with the full moon on 20th of September. Now that could be in form of climate change becoming front and center, which it already has, but because of an event, it can become front and center. And that agreement might require it to be enforced, or there might be a lot of analysis on what's happening with the extreme climate events and whether that accord is serving its purpose or not. The key countries I have seen these two lunations impact, the Virgo and the Pisces one, are Saudi Arabia, Iran, Russia, Turkey. These are countries who have their lunar eclipse, lunar nodes in close proximity to each other. Like in some ways, their destiny is tied because their nodes are destiny and they are very close to each other. We see events across these in 2015, and I do believe we would see events across these countries in September. Saudi Arabia, Iran, Russia, Turkey. It of course points to oil as being a key topic in some ways. Now, the nodes of Western European countries, they are more impacted by cardinal signs. So I did see France, Germany impacted, but more in Libra season and in October. I can look at specific countries if required. Canada is key country with nodes in Virgo and Pisces activated, and that mortal accident that I mentioned in the Pisces full moon is very critical for Canada. Now, having the nodes in Virgo and Pisces, the 20th of September full moon is very, very critical for Canada, and it falls on Mars of Trudeau. Mars opposite Pluto, which Trudeau has in his natal chart, will be activated, and it's very, very critical. Trudeau was elected in November of 2015 under the activation of the Pisces solar eclipse back in 2015. So there could be an ending or release or loss linked to that, or potential information coming to light under the Pisces full moon, which falls on Canadian election day. I don't predict deaths. I don't think I can play that role. So I'm not going to talk about any of that, and I don't think anybody can for sure say those things. But when we have Mars opposite Pluto in natal chart, there is normally a hurt that can come. This can be an incident related to accident or somebody hurting or violence in some ways. And I think looking at what's happening currently, I think his astrologer or he intuitively knows this. So Canada has been going through its Uranus transits with the recent Uranus retrograde. It happened on the moon of Canada. When that happens, there's a sudden shift in people's opinion with that. But right now, Uranus is retrograde, so I think there might be a reconsideration of that opinion. So I do think that Trudeau's, if he is able to avoid this mortal accident which comes with the Pisces full moon impact at the degree of his Mars opposite Pluto in his zodiac sign, in his natal chart, we can see him winning in some ways. I don't see him losing if he survives that, because he has a lunar eclipse in November on his midheaven, which in the past has been very beneficial to him. It shows acts of violence or physical assault, which I think he knows, or his astrologer knows. Mars opposite Pluto, people know that they have that aspect because they inherit it. It's an inherited aspect from a parent, especially father. California as a state is the other place which I think would be impacted. It was formed on 9th of September 1950, so I'm using that chart. And the new moon of 6th of September could be significant for it because it falls in op of its sun. I also saw that under the Pisces full moon, which can invoke the eclipse decree, we could see collective impact on people who are either innocent or invariably caught in the situation. They never were responsible for the situation, but they are somehow caught up in it because it's a collective full moon. So because of being part of a collective change, they get caught in it. And if you look at the history in 2015 or in 2007, we have found history time and again show that IC's linked activity, they peaked in 2015 with these lunations, with the activation of the Pisces eclipse in 2015, which would be at the same degree as the 20th of September full moon. So we saw IC's attacks in 3 continents in 2015 across Paris, Turkey, Russia, and California. In March of 2015, when these lunations had happened, we saw Saudis launching airstrikes on Yemen against the Houthi rebels, which led to civilian casualties, which benefited Al-Qaeda and ISIS at that time. Then 2015, under these lunations, we saw Iran nuclear deal being signed, which Israel strongly opposed. So I see that coming up at this time as well. Russia at that time, who has the same nodes under these lunations, intervened in Syria's civil war. There was a lot of these intermingling. As I said, their destiny is connected in some ways. And I saw these countries somehow getting caught up in each other's changes, fated changes, and then becoming part of a collective event in some ways. So we saw Russia at that time, they became involved in Syria at that time, and they were not coordinated with US, because of which Turkey ended up shooting down Russian fighter jet, and we saw US strike on Doctors Without Borders hospital in Afghanistan November 2015. Now this shows a thread running across countries, I believe, which could be influenced by the September lunation. So that's what I have for you today. We've covered the full moon, the new moon, and the activation of the eclipse. Now we're going to go by date, rundown the next week, and rundown of the month, and you're prepped for the month. Have a great month ahead. I'll see you in the next video now. Thank you.